Chapter 125. Above the ocean, between the waters of Sarian and El Dorado, two beings flew through the sky. "This is amazing," a silver-haired elf cheered as she steered her metal flying vehicle with excitement. She flew over the sea with joy, rising high into the clouds and then dropping just a few feet above the water. "As expected of rimuru," she said, laughing as the wind rushed past her. As she glided low, a large sea monster suddenly jumped out of the water, ready to attack anything that entered its territory. Elmisia didn't panic. She calmly pressed a button, activating the weapons built into the wings of the plane. Two cannons powered by magicals lit up and fired at the monster. The blast struck their target, and an explosion followed. The sea beast's body burst open, and pieces of flesh flew several meters into the air before falling back into the ocean. Not missing a chance, other sea creatures quickly gathered to snatch up what was left of the once feared predator. The water began to thrash as the beast's lifeless body floated on the surface. "Adding those cannons really made this vehicle more fun," she said, pulling her plane higher into the sky. That's when she spotted it, a similar flying machine heading straight toward her. Grinning, she quickly turned her plane and looped behind the new arrival. With her eyes on the screen in front of her, she locked onto the target. Holding the control stick steady, she pressed the button and fired a barrage of shots at the flying vehicle ahead. The rain of fire was dodged, scattering as it hit the water below, sending up sprays that created a light drizzle and a momentary distraction. The enemy plane suddenly picked up speed, smoke hissing from its body. A thick screen of gray began to form around it, hiding its escape from view. "Tisk, he got away," Elmisia muttered, scanning her surroundings. She didn't activate her skills or detection abilities, they weren't allowed in their little game. One of the screens in her cockpit flashed red, incoming danger. The alert blinked rapidly as the signal closed in from behind. Without hesitation, she yanked the controls to the left. A blast of raw magicil shot past her plane, slicing through the air and clearing the surrounding clouds in its path. "Nice try," she smirked, pulling into a sharp loop to gain a better view and angle. Her eyes flicked to the radar. The red dot blinked once, position confirmed. The enemy plane passed just overhead. "Elusive," she muttered, then pulled the trigger, unleashing a spray of cannon fire. She didn't need perfect aim, just pressure. A few shots grazed the tail, causing the enemy plane to stagger, spinning slightly out of control before leveling out again. Now gliding low over the sea, the plane skimmed the water's surface. Elmisia grinned, she had visual. Both planes raced just above the ocean, their reflections dancing over the waves. The tension crackled in the air. Let's see you defend against this." With a pull of the controls, Elmisia's plane suddenly shot upward. In a blink, she spun around and dropped from the sky, aiming directly at her opponent flying low. She began firing rapidly, the sound of the cannons filling the sky. Then, with a flick of a switch, she activated the missiles she'd been saving for the right moment. All four launched from under her wings, sleek, glowing, and fast. The other pilot noticed and reacted quickly, flipping and twisting through the air with incredible skill. But one missile locked on, crashing into the right wing. The explosion shook the sky. The enemy plane spiraled out of control, crashing down hard into the ocean. Water erupted like a geyser on impact, the sea roaring in response. Sea beasts lurking nearby scattered at the sudden burst, vanishing into the deep. Elmisia slowed her plane, hovering above the crash site. She kept her eyes on the wreckage, watching as flames flickered and parts of the plane began to sink. Setting her plane to hover mode, she stood from her seat and leaned over the side, peering down at the damaged aircraft. "Are you alive?" she called out, voice curious but with a hint of teasing. A voice answered from behind her. "Do you seriously think I'll die from that?" Startled, Elmisia turned quickly, and there he was, sitting casually on the wing of her own plane, completely unharmed. "Rimuru," she gasped, then broke into a grin. "These things are great. They've got a totally different feel from riding dragons." Rimuru stood up from the tail of the plane, his figure hovering slightly above the metal surface. He turned toward her with an easy smile. "Honestly," he said, floating toward her, "I still prefer flying on my own. These things, they're just toys." Elmisia eventually landed the plane in a secluded spot in El Dorado. Having gotten permission, not really, from Leon, they had secretly built a mini airport and a few warehouses to house the planes and other toys they'd made, all without anyone knowing. Placing it in Leon's territory served two purposes. One, because he didn't care for such things and would ignore it anyway, and two, because it would definitely annoy him. In their minds, it was a win-win situation. Speaking of toys, Rimuji. Elmisia turned to Rimuru as they walked through the quiet airport, heading toward a small mansion they used to rest in. How are those new ones coming along? The mansion, though tucked away in secrecy, had everything a real one would: bedrooms, a full kitchen, a fireplace, and other necessities. It was unnecessarily extravagant for what they used it for, which was usually just the kitchen and the living room. Rimuru, already thinking about what to cook for their next meal, turned toward the Empress of Sarian with a casual smile. I managed to get a few ready, he said. We can do a trial run later. Shizue took a deep breath as she landed on El Dorado. It was her first time coming to and visiting the place where her former master was currently living. Rimuru had been more than happy to bring her to the Demon Lord's territory. He had some plans near the area, or so he said. She waved him goodbye, now finding herself being dropped off. Chloe had actually visited earlier than her. She didn't want to make Leon worry and made sure to visit to talk in more detail about her and Rimuru. As Shizue looked out at the city, she noticed two people nearby. One was a blonde-haired young woman with a fox-like monster running toward her. Pirino. Pizu. The other was a knight in black armor, someone she instantly recognized. Claude. The very same person who had taught her swordsmanship when she had just been summoned. Shizue. Pirino cried, dashing forward and flinging her arms around the conqueror of flames. Shizue, caught slightly off guard but smiling warmly, returned the embrace, hugging the blonde elementalist tightly. She gently patted the head of Pizu, the wind fox they had named together. I missed you, Pirino exclaimed joyfully as they finally pulled apart from the hug. I heard from Leon-sama and Alros-sama that you were allowed to visit now. I came running the moment I heard you were arriving. Claude, standing nearby with arms crossed and an amused sigh escaping his lips, shook his head. We wouldn't have stopped her from visiting anyway, he said, voice calm but firm. If you had just told us, we could have personally brought Shizue here. It was true. Though Shizue was no longer the most recently summoned Otherworlder in Leon's domain, she remained a unique case. They had seen many summoned children, some of them were summoned themselves, and all had experienced difficult, even tragic circumstances. But none quite like Shizue. She had been summoned with her body already burned, her mind fractured by trauma, haunted by the memory of witnessing her mother's death. It was this knowledge that made the Magic Knights care for her as if she were one of their own. They had sworn to help her grow stronger, to ensure that she would never again be a victim of such horror. Of course, there had been obstacles. Ifrit had misinterpreted Leon's orders and had chosen to dwell within Shizue's body, intending to protect her, not realizing he was turning her into a vessel to serve his own ends. It had been something that almost re-traumatized the poor girl. Thankfully, after Leon had clarified Ifrit's intended role, the flame spirit had grown more solemn and self-aware. He had come to understand the damage he could have caused, and the toll it might have taken on Shizue, his host. We didn't know that Claude-sama, Pirino said, turning to the Black Knight with a pout, planting her hands on her hips. Leon-sama made her fight the hero alone. How were we supposed to know she was still welcome here? Claude merely shrugged, his armored steps quiet as he walked toward Shizue and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. It's good to have you here, he said, his tone soft. How have you been? Shizue smiled faintly. Her instructor had always been strict, likely where she had inherited her own severe teaching style. That, combined with the hero's training, had made her one of the more terrifying mentors among the summoned children, even to Yuki. Yes, thank you for having me, Shizue replied, her eyes warm, her voice sincere. The three of them began walking together toward the city, their footsteps echoing faintly on the cobblestone path as they guided the visiting flame user through familiar streets and memories. I'll show you lots of interesting places here, Pirino said excitedly, raising a hand as if volunteering for the task. If possible, I'd like a spar with you, Claude added, glancing over his shoulder at her with a faint smile. To see how far you've grown. Seal said her goodbyes to the others after chatting with Romulus. Taking her leave, she used transportation magic to go to her planned destination. Granbel gritted his teeth upon hearing of Mariabelle's death. He was already filled with anger, and now it was boiling over. Blaming Yuki and Luminous for everything that had happened, he had gathered his summoned Otherworlders and had Rizul by his side, ready for what was to come. He stood before a doll that looked exactly like his deceased wife. It was almost perfect, her face, her hair, everything down to the smallest detail. A painful silence filled the room as he stared at it. The doll's hand reached out to him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward, accepting it. The moment their hands touched, the doll began to crumble. It fell apart in front of him, fading into dust that scattered across the floor. His body remained still. Then, his appearance began to change. His hair turned a shining blonde, his face sharper than before. He reached for the sword mounted on the wall and gripped it tightly. It felt right in his hand, as if it belonged there. He was ready to fight for his ideals. That is just stupidity, a cold voice echoed through the room. Neither Granbell nor Rizul had noticed Seal appear. She was suddenly there, calm and composed, standing in the center of the room. Both men shifted into defensive stances. Granbell raised his sword. Rizul kept his eyes on her, waiting for any movement. He was ready to back Granbell or strike first if needed. Seal didn't react. Dying for a useless cause, Granbell Rosso, she said without emotion, ignoring the sword. Pointed at her. Why don't you die for humanity instead? I am fighting for humanity. Granbell shouted. He swung his sword beside her. The blade didn't touch her, but the force of the strike smashed the table and bookshelf behind her. Still, she didn't flinch. Who do you think we are? We're the only ones standing between humanity's extinction and salvation. Rizul remained silent. He didn't move. He watched. If she made a move, he would act. If Granbell attacked again, he would follow. But something felt off. His instincts told him not to make a mistake here. Then continue to guard humanity, hero, Seal said with a sigh. She sounded tired, like she was explaining something obvious. In the future, an invasion will occur in the West. Is now really the time to destroy the ones protecting humanity? What protection? Granbell snapped. Luminous treats humans like livestock. Are they safe? She asked. What are you even saying? He growled. You think we're just prey to be managed? Don't mess with me. Are they safe? We've endured everything, monsters, demons, we've survived. Are they safe? Quote. Granbell clenched his jaw, unable to answer. His grip on the sword tightened again. Ciel's tone didn't change. She kept repeating the same question. Calm, steady, not aggressive. But it dug into him more than a shout ever could. Luminous has kept humanity safe from monsters, she continued. Her holy knights are working to protect the Western nations. What more do you expect? They're not supposed to be farm animals looked after by a vampire. Then should Luminous stop protecting them? She asked. Should she allow the giants to invade the West? Should she let Guy Crimson's demons attack the North? Should Master Rimuru send his forces here? Granbell didn't respond. He looked away, frustration written across his face. His sword was still in his hand, but he didn't lift it. Seal stepped forward. Her voice didn't rise, but each word landed clearly. If you truly want to protect humanity, and you're not just using it as an excuse, then help Luminous when the time comes. Without waiting for a reply, she raised her hand. Light surrounded her as she activated her magic. She vanished. Her next destination, the capital of the Holy Empire, where Luminous Valentine resided. In the throne room, Luminous sat quietly until the sudden shift in magic made her eyes narrow. Seal, what are you doing here? She asked, rising slightly from her seat. Seal looked directly at her. Do you wish to have your skills evolve? To be continued.